Bochi Chogi, Yelshungi Wanse, Mrs. Sulu Trade, Talepa Yakapti, Mountsoy, Shun La Lentamni Inse Sunu.
Tashingan Doctor Shigove, Yara look Titizove.
Itaringana Zaptui Sadachica Bebe, Chendisu, Token Gadebutuna demo me Tugala.
Well, something give me this car, Machil Tadosa, 10% registration get me to Mosa.
Why no? Get it, Gaina.
Like hold the curtains lovely.
We've been searching for this all over the world for the last 30 years.
Boy, Avidi, get up the Vamichimina. Avidi got you Baumola.
Dingy Lamgidolina.
Kachipini Denwino?
Titoya, now the Churchangalu, Lamagia, Tusum Bomb Chist, Jadbiu.
Maybe he decoli Kangala.
Yeah, Kachigolina.
Election Tilla.
We live in strange times.
Democracy thing at GNH Kitsang Much Ide. The Kadabirumache, Shemeka Kapachika Danda Yargi Joseph Chibego.
The Buddha, much the Hamalika to be the madam.
Mandarina Magilam Luzi Tsugi Kola Kane Mishi. Tingachelu Lesum Ina Menai Mishive. Tingachezu Choka Lesum Becha Kuchidu.
For everyone that's listening, I'm Carolyn Hines, film critic and journalist, and I'm here covering the Bhutan International Film Festival, and I'm joined with the director and cast of The Monk and the Gun, and I'm so happy because I laughed through this entire film, but I also was like, because there's so many references to politics and colonialism, as well as gender and patriarchy and gender roles in Bhutan society. So I'm very excited to talk to all three of you, and thank you so much for joining me this morning for this interview.
Thank you for having us, Caroline.
Thank you. So could you please introduce yourselves? So first, our director.
Hello everyone, my name is Pawo Choyning Dorji. I'm the writer and director of The Monk and the Gun.
Hello, it's me, Diki. I played the Tomo in The Monk and the Gun.
Hello, I'm Benji. From The Monk and the Gun. My name is Tanden Sonam.
Thank you so much. So first of all, I know this is Pawo. This is your second feature film.
Yes, it is.
And I think I was at the Q&A, and you said that you don't have any formal education in filmmaking. So I want to ask you, having had no formal education in filmmaking, what was it that made you decide to become a filmmaker? Because I'm always interested in what makes someone say, you know what, I'm going to become a filmmaker, which is not an easy task to do. Making a film is not easy at all.
Yes, it is. It's very difficult. And for me, I was really drawn by the power of storytelling. First of all, I'm a Bhutanese, and as I was saying in the Q&A, in Bhutan, storytelling forms such an important part of our culture, our tradition, and so important that we don't even have a word for storytelling. In Bhutan, to tell a story is to untie a knot. That's the higher purpose storytelling holds in our life. Second, I'm a Buddhist, and we Buddhists really place so much emphasis on storytelling.
Yes.
For example, the Buddhist term for art, creativity, is jutsal. That means illusion. So the Buddha had said that storytelling, art, creativity is the creation of illusions which lead us to reality. And being a Buddhist Bhutanese, you could say that storytelling was always a very important aspect of my life, my spiritual belief. And because of that, I was really drawn to it. So I started off first as a photographer. I traveled around taking stills, then I became a writer, and you could say that slowly it transitioned into moving pictures. I believe that filmmaking is the most powerful tool of storytelling now, and it was almost like a natural progression for me as a storyteller. And yes, I never had a formal education in filmmaking, but I've really tried to learn from the experiences I've had, and even The Monk and the Gun, you were talking about how there's a lot of politics in it. And that's because I studied political science in college, and I try to bring that forward as well. So my experiences, whatever I've gone through, I try and use that as an asset in the way I make films.
Well, the thing is, I'm from the Caribbean. Coming from the Caribbean, storytelling is a very important form of our culture, but especially for West Indians and for the Caribbean people, because our ancestry is tied to slavery, to the transatlantic slave trade, and in African culture, telling stories is a big part of discovering who you are. It's telling our history, and it's telling our people like who you can be and where you are. So for a lot of Caribbean people, because that connection was kind of lost, we kind of translated our storytelling modes into song. So a lot of our music, like calypso and reggae and all of that, to some people it's just like entertainment, but for a lot of us, that's how we tell our stories. A lot of our calypso music is very political. You know, and like again, to some people to outsiders, they would be hearing like a calypso song playing at Cropover, which is a festival, and this is a cool song, this thing. But for us, when we're listening, we're like, this is talking about the politics in the country. This is talking about like if there was like some kind of political strife in the election, that's in the song, you know.
And that's exactly what I was saying. Even song, it is the creation of illusions, and then it leads us to reality. Just like that, with The Monk and the Gun, we don't have so much song in this one, but in my previous film, Lunana, A Yak in the Classroom, which was Oscar nominee, in that one I relied a lot on songs and folk songs from our country to tell the story of our country. So I really can relate to what you were saying.
Right, and the thing with this film, like one thing I love about listening to other languages is there's a rhythm. And there's a rhythm to Bhutanese language, and I think it like when you have a rhythm to a language, what the characters are saying in a film tells you a lot about their emotions. And for the characters of Benji and Somo, I can hear like their confusion and everything coming through in the rhythm that you speak. So for Deki, I want to ask you a question, because for your character, Somo, she is a mother and she's very happy with her life, because she has her husband, she has her daughter, but her life is being disrupted because of the upcoming political elections. They were like, we didn't ask for elections. They were like, we didn't ask for democracy, but she's being torn between her husband and her mother because they're on opposite sides of the election. And I think for you, for the way your character doesn't really speak a lot at the beginning. Like, I like that there's a progression. She goes from like and it's not that, I remember thinking in the film, is it because she thinks that she doesn't really have a voice in her household? But it's not that she doesn't have a voice, it's that she's listening to everything that everyone is saying, and she's forming her own opinions. And once she starts speaking, that's where you really get to see she's very opinionated. You know, she's very sure of who she is. She's very sure of what she wants for her daughter. So talk to me about finding your own connection to this character and saying, I'm going to have to learn how to speak through my body and speak through my body language in this film, because that's how you tell your story of your character, mostly through your body language and your facial expressions.
Exactly. That's how Pawo portrayed the innocence, the nature of how conservative we Bhutanese are. But the Tomo, she's going through a lot. Of course, she doesn't speak much, but then at the end, she stands for herself. She takes the stand for her family, for her daughter, for her mother. That whatever change comes, whatever be it modernization, be it within her small society, the things we were happy with. This should stay the same. So that's and me as Diki, I can kind of relate myself to Tomo, because I am not so open, you know. But when I feel like, oh yes, I have to take a stand. Now the line is crossing, so I'll have to say it. So then I take my stand. So I can relate to the character, and I'm so much. This character Tomo is very special to me.
She is. I really like her because she's kind of like me. In that I call myself an extroverted introvert. Where like if I need to, I'll speak up. And people are always surprised because I'm also very opinionated. But the way that I do it is I'm an observer. My mom used to say that all the time, that I would be very quiet and I watch people. Even from the time I was a baby, people would try to get me to talk. She's like, no, I'd be very quiet and I watch people. And I think I'm so much the same way. She was watching what everyone was saying. You know, she was watching the interactions, and she's very observant. Like when her daughter came home and her daughter was trying to brush it out, she's like, no, something's wrong. Tell me. And that's because she pays attention to her daughter. You know, she's paying attention to all of the discussions about the politics happening around her. People think, oh, she's a woman, and like for instance, they might think Bhutanese society is very patriarchal, so she doesn't have a voice in the home. And it's not that she doesn't have a voice in the home. It's just that, for instance, the scenes with her husband, he was just doing all the talking. And while he's just forming all these thoughts while he's talking, she's just saying, you have no idea what you're talking about. And she's like, but I'm gonna let you continue and talk, and I'm just gonna see how this plays out. So there's that character. And then for you, Tamo, your character, Benji. 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 Tandon. Benji is Benji. I had to laugh because Benji is the kind of character you're just, as you're watching, you're saying, my guy, what are you doing? That was me in the entire time. Like, what are you doing? How did you get into the gun trade in Bhutan of all places? So when you got the script and you read your character, I need to know what was your first thought about Benji? Because my first thought of Benji is, this guy has no idea what he's doing, and I'm like, does he even understand that how illegal the gun trade is? And he just doesn't seem to know. So for you, like, what was your impression of Benji when you first read the script and you started to get to know this character?
Thank you so much. Benji, I think is somehow a portrayal of how maybe a Bhutanese can be, the innocence of Bhutan, and maybe subconsciously somewhere he somehow knows that guns are always a manifestation of violence, and he knows that maybe it's a little illegal to go on a pursuit for a gun.
A little illegal.
Yeah. But maybe again he shoves it aside because his wife is sick, and economically he's not very stable. So maybe he chooses to just not think of the bad sides of the gun, and then still like go on with wrong in pursuit of the gun. But at the same time, I think Benji have a very empathetic heart also. Yeah, somehow you know that, oh, this guy Benji, he is like, going after a gun. But subconsciously, the audience, I think, somehow feels that, oh, he's not a bad guy. So it is a beautiful paradox, Benji character. Yeah, did you like Benji?
I did. I did. I liked all the characters. I did like Benji, so that's why I was just like, guy, my dude, please stop, because he has a wife at home who's obviously sick, but I understood his motivation. He wants the money, because the first thing that the first scene that we see of Benji is he's counting the money.
Yeah.
And like, that he's worried about his finances, and then we find out that his wife is sick. So you understand his motivations. And that's where the film is for a lot of people. I think one of the underlying themes for this film is people who find themselves in bad or odd situations, but for good reasons, like the monk and the gun.
Yeah.
Like he has no clue.
Yes.
Just how dangerous a gun is.
Yes.
For him, he's like, I've never seen a gun, but my lama wants a gun, so I'm gonna go get a gun.
Yeah.
And for him, he might as well be going to go and buy a bag of rice.
Exactly.
He's treating it the same way. So I kind of see Benji almost the same, where he's just like, I have to get this gun because I need to get this money for my wife. So he's not thinking about like the political as well as the legal and moral consequences of actively looking for a gun. right? And even when they came to the whole AK, it's not like spoiler, but not this is spoiler, but the whole AK for the looking for the AK-47 bit, where it was just like, oh, but we can go and call someone an Indian brain across. I was like, what? I was like, what? But you see, but the thing I love about this film is like, if this was an American film, that whole situation would be very different.
Yes.
It would be because the life of the implications of guns in the Western world, and I would also say the outside of the enclave of Bhutan is very different.
Yes.
You know, like, but for these people, they're not even curious about guns. They're just like, it's just a thing in a movie.
Yeah.
You know, and so like, and it made me think, I wish it could be that way for the rest of the world, but it's not, because we have like so many wars.
Yes, yes.
And we have so much gun violence, as well as the quest for control using guns.
Yes.
You know, and something that I think this film does very smartly is it talks, and this is tying into the whole male and female dynamics in the film, is in the Western world, guns are a sign of not only power, but also used almost as a phallic symbol.
Yes.
And it's a phallic symbol in that it's about the representation of men's power. They think the bigger the gun, the more powerful I am. And I kind of saw it the same way, like for the character of the monk, when he watches the 007 film, he doesn't understand that the reason James Bond is walking around the 007 is because that's a phallic symbol in the West. But he's just thinking, oh, it's just a thing he has, and he sees him as a hero, right? So I want you, both of you in particular, to talk about the representations of guns in this film and what it means to the male characters in particular, because the women in this film have no interactions with guns. At all.
Yes.
And I love that, actually. But it's only the male characters that have interactions with guns. And I thought that was so interesting, because in the West, when we see men interact with guns, it's about oppression, it's about control, and it's about destruction.
Yes.
But in this film, it's more about just, to me, I kind of see it as a symbol of what the world could be if guns weren't such a tool of destruction. So I want you first, Pawo, to talk about that, but then Benji, I want you to Benji Tandon to talk about Benji's perception of guns. But first, to Pawo.
But you know, Carolyn, it's interesting that you are bringing up patriarch society. When I first wrote the script, you know, Tsomo's mother could have been the father, you know. I mean, that's a possibility. But then the interesting thing with Bhutan is, even though we have this conservative society, as you were saying, the phallus is an important symbol of our culture, Bhutanese society is a very matriarchal society.
But I was going to ask that, actually.
So that's why I had her mother and not her father, who was kind of seen as like the leader of the family. For example, in Bhutan, family heirlooms, land, homes usually go to the eldest daughter, not the eldest son. And when people marry into the family, the groom will move into the bride's house, and it's usually the eldest daughter who is you know, seen as you know, the boss of the family, you could say. So much that, like, in certain parts of Bhutan, the mother, the eldest, like for example, if you have sisters in the family, and the children of the younger sisters will refer to the eldest aunt as Amchi, which is like big mother, you know. So it's a very matriarchal society, and that's what I wanted to show in the movie as well. Now, when it comes to guns, yes, as you were saying, for me, the reason why this whole quest revolves around the gun is it's almost like the coming of the gun, the introduction of the gun is the coming of modernization. It represents that. It represents modernization. It represents westernization, which is contrasting with the Eastern Bhutanese symbol, which is the phallus, in a very strange way. So as you were saying, both these symbols, in a way, it could be said that it's something seen as power, could be seen as something masculine, you know. And even the phallus, you know, for us in Bhutan, symbolism is something very, very important. So what does the gun symbolize? It may symbolize violence, suffering, conflict. But the underlying theme in Bhutan is that more than the action, it is the motivation for your action that is more important. So if you have a profound, motivation, then something that can symbolize violence, suffering, can also symbolize peace, love, kindness, if it's used the right way. And the phallus as well is very interesting because being a Buddhist culture, the ultimate goal of all beings in Bhutan is to achieve the state of enlightenment. So everything that we have is supposed to aid that. As I was saying, stories are illusions that lead to reality. Just like that, everything that we do in our lives also is supposed to lead to enlightenment. So what is the ultimate obstacle to enlightenment? Well, we believe that it is our inhibition, our concepts. And being a Vajrayana country, it is kind of like that belief like, oh, if you have water in your ear, how do you take it off? Put more water, and then take it out, just like that. So if inhibition is your obstacle to enlightenment, how do you destroy inhibition? Well, we keep giving you more and more inhibition until you realize that all this inhibition is non-existent. It is, all projections of your own mind. So does a phallus make you uncomfortable? Well, we will keep waving a phallus around.
A giant red one.
Until it gets to a point where you realize, hey, it's not that bad. It doesn't really
exist. It's just a thing. It's just a thing.
So it is a symbol to destroy inhibition. And I particularly wanted to use the phallus because as I grew up during that period of change and transition, I would see phalluses everywhere. It was such an important part of our culture. You go to a home, it'll be painted on the walls, it'll be painted on there'll be a phallus hanging on the doorway. There's a temple that is focused just on phalluses. But ever since we opened up and the change came in as we show in the movie, there's almost like the new Bhutan has suddenly become very uncomfortable
more
about the phallus.
conservative.
They're like, oh, what will the Western modern world think of us? They might think we are so strange having big wooden penises hanging all over. So sadly now, Carolyn, we see less and less phalluses. And that's why I wanted a phallus in this movie. And I told my production designer, I said, I want it big, I want it red. So yeah, that's
I knew, and the thing is, from the time that old man was started carving, I knew exactly what he was carving. And it was just like, let's see where this is gonna go. But when I did realize what it was, I was making the connection between the guns and the whole phallus and the whole representation of male dominance and what it represents in Western society. Because using the phallus, for instance, like again in the Caribbean, like we are conservative, but not like, but we still recognize sexuality and all that kind of stuff. But the film was making me think of how Western, and this is a discussion I was having with a filmmaker, a Nepalese filmmaker in TIFF, because he had a film called A Road to a Mountain, and it was talking again about westernization and how that changes indigenous cultures. And this film, I was thinking like the election process is going to, like they're talking about modernization, but I was thinking for people, for like the electoral official, she wants modernization, she wants this and that, but I was thinking she's not looking at the consequences of modernization. And the consequences of modernization is Western judgment. Exactly. Western conservatism. The change in cultures because of westernization. And I'm using my own ancestry as coming from the Caribbean and in Africa. There are many tribes in Africa which have, like, the phallus is a part of their culture and a part of their tradition, and it's just a thing. It's like, the same thing for a lot of cultures. Like the female body is recognized, it's like, look at goddesses, but it's also just acknowledging the female body in all its various forms. And this film, I was seeing that, and I was seeing how this, like, and I love that you use a gigantic red one. You're like, you can't miss it. It's there. But it's about showing, and putting it into the white man's hands. I was like, that's genius. I know, because
he wanted a gun.
He wanted a gun and he got a phallus instead. But it's about showing, like here, you white person, you want to bring a gun into my country. You want to think I'm going to give you a part of my culture, and this is going to make you uncomfortable. It's about making. To me, I saw it as making the Westerner uncomfortable, making the colonialist, the settler, the invader uncomfortable on your own spot, because that's something indigenous people don't really get to do. And for Benji, he's taking Ron around, but I want to ask you, in your act, in your portrayal of Benji, was there any point in time where he thought, this is a really bad idea, and what could be the consequences for my own people? Did he ever have that moment, do you think?
Yeah, Benji, I think when they were chasing after the gun from the monk, and then his wife calls him, and then the first time he gets the call, he wasn't paranoid, but maybe the second time when his wife mentions about the police, and while they were looking for the foreigner with the gun, so that time, maybe a little bit Benji must have thought, maybe is the foreigner really doing something fishy. So that particular scene actually again portrays more rawness, I feel, because had it been any Westerner, I think they would have gotten immediately that it is wrong. It is wrong. And that time he was not sure whether it was really wrong or not. He just not just that he just wanted to make money, but I think he was not sure, very genuinely and sincerely, that to get a gun for him is a bad thing. He must have a little bit subconsciously thought that maybe it's not right, but he didn't think it's bad. So I think still he realized a little bit, but he still carried on, because maybe he's still thinking about his wife more. So his concern for the wife is more, then maybe this gun thing is a little wrong.
But do you think he had a thought what would my wife think about this, and thinking I got this money to help her by doing something that's extremely wrong, by gun trading, again for him it's this kind of ambiguous thing where it's not clearly defined exactly just how wrong it is and stuff. But did he, for me, because I was thinking, well, she wouldn't necessarily want to receive help knowing that this is how the money came.
So I think Benji is a little bit educated. So like I said, he was aware that guns are always a portrayal of violence. So it's a little wrong. He was aware of that, and he was also aware that it's an antique gun, the first one. So he thought it's just for collection. So he just thought it's for collection. So it's not intended to harm. Like Pawo said, motivation is the base of Buddhism, and he must have thought, the motivation is just for collection. So that's why maybe he shoved it aside. And the primary reason being, maybe even if it is a little wrong, my wife needs the money and I need it too. So he carried on. Right?
But then she would say, but wait, how did we get this money? And then she'd be like, but that's, to me, it's kind of like a moral quandary, where you're saying, I need the help, I need the financial help, but the way how I got this money.
But Carolyn, it's interesting. When I created these characters, I wanted each of them to personify a moment in Bhutan. So when I was working with Diki on Tsomo, I told her, I said that you represent the motherhood, of Bhutan. And I think when you act in a movie, when you sign up to be an actor in a movie, a lot of times it's about, how will I be seen? How will I be heard? What will the audience, how will they relate to me? And when I started working with her in the beginning, she was just a fly on the wall. And I told her, I said, you have to have confidence in me. And you might feel like you're not being heard, you might not being seen, but then it is this moment of just observing that will lead to when you feel your livelihood as your mother, as your family, that is being threatened, and that is when you really come up, and it'll be so powerful. And I think it worked wonderfully. So she is this mother who's caught in that change and transition. Then you have Benji, who I wanted him to represent the youth, that is embracing modernity, who's educated, who speaks English. He drives a car, and if you listen, his car is always playing pop music, you know, and when you go to his house for the first time, you can hear Dire Straits playing in the background. So he represents the coming of modernization, coming of westernization. He seems to know that in America there's more guns than people. He seems to know that the Second Amendment is about gun rights.
Is about gun rights.
But even if he cannot translate it as the Second Amendment, it comes out as the second verse in the Buddhist Sutra. But then he's that, you know, he represents this the group of Bhutanese who says, oh, all this change is coming, let me embrace it and let me make a quick buck while this is happening, you know. And like Tomo's husband, that one, you know, when I was working with Choying, who did an incredible job, you know, acting as Chofel, I told him that you are this opposite of him, you know, uneducated villager, lacking confidence with all this change coming, and he's lacking confidence and he's trying to find his footing, you know, whether it is competing on who has the bigger TV in the village or which political party he's going to vote for, you know. He's trying to find his footing in this new Bhutan as an uneducated villager who does not have enough cows to sell to buy a new TV. So each of these characters, I wanted them to personify and represent some society in Bhutan, but then the underlying you could say feature within all these characters is this sense of innocence, because innocence is such a beautiful quality of the Bhutanese. Whether you're the Lama, whether you're the monk, whether you're Benji, whether you're Tomo, whether you're the mother, whether you're the gun-owning village man, they all have this quality of innocence. And something that I kept telling the actors while we were making this film is that what I want to portray is this innocence. When you modernize, when you open up to the outside world, this quality of innocence can be seen by the modern world as ignorance. And for example, when I first made the cut of the film and I sent it out to some people for comments, some people said, oh, you know, Pawo, that scene where, you know, the man is offered all this money and then the next day he just gives it for free. That's a little bit hard to take. And I said, this is exactly why I have that scene, because the modern mind will find that difficult to accept. But this happens in Bhutan. This happens in Bhutan when you have this devotion, you know, to the Buddha's teachings, and when you see the Lama and the Lama says something, and the Lama says something so so controversial, like he wants a gun. There is no question about it, because you have this devotion. And even if you have debt, even if you need the money, the devotion, the innocence is so much that we'll be like, oh, you take it. You know? Or even when he says the money is too much, you know.
Right.
Yeah, so it's, you know.
Right. I'm going to get to that because I actually want to talk. No, I want to talk about it because I thought it was very, that to me, that's one of my favorite things of the film. But I want to ask, you mentioned about, yes, it's a matriarchal society, and I don't want to ask Dusky about the relationships between her and the female characters, because while she doesn't have any interactions with the guns, I noticed the female characters, they all talk about politics. For instance, for Somo, when she talks to her mother, and while the mother's talking, and the mother, you can tell that the mother, you can tell that Soma understands where her mother's coming from, and she doesn't resent her for it, because she herself is thinking, what my husband is doing isn't necessarily for the benefit of our culture, of our people. But so she's again staying quiet and she's listening to what people do. But when the mom, she puts the money down and she puts the radish and the pork, which she then turns into her daughter's favorite dish, I thought that was again such a very it's such an elegant moment, because it's showing, like, for these women, like, supporting each other is the most important thing. You know, she's like, okay, my mom and my husband aren't getting along, I'm not gonna get between that. She's like, that's between them. They can start it out. But I want to talk to you about about your scenes with all the female characters, because there's the mother, then there's the daughter, and then there's the election official. And I think what she says to the election official is what changes the course of the whole entire film, because like she makes this woman think about modernization and westernization and politics and democracy and even the monarchy from a very particular very firm mind. To me, I see someone as being the one with the most to use a phrase, political power in the whole entire community. So talk to me about the relationships between the female characters and like your what in playing someone I think who's so quietly powerful. And like while you may think, oh, like no one is paying attention to her, I'm like, I was paying attention to her the entire time because I wanted to see what you would do. I wanted to see what she would say because I know if whatever she had to say is going to matter more than what the men are saying, to be truthful.
Women, the women in Bhutanese society, we women play a very important role. But during that time, we women were like basically women were meant to be at home, serving the family, cooking for her husband, washing their clothes, and doing everything that's like, and feeding them. And then Tomo knows that what her mother is doing, because Tomo knows that there's changes coming, but then and she knows too that she cannot do anything about the change. She cannot stop the change. It is meant to happen. And then she has children. She's got a daughter, and it's a girl. So sending her to school, and she's getting a good education, and while her husband is wanting to send her daughter to the city to study, but Tomo thinks as long as she's educated, that's enough for her. So, and Tomo's mother, yes, her mother wants Tomo to support her and not her husband. And then we can see that when there's a conversation between Tomo and her mother, that her mother was never happy with her husband. I have warned you from before. He's not going to be helpful for you. He's not going to be useful. So milk and water is never supposed to be mixed, but you did that. So here it is. You can see what's happening to you, what you're going through. So all this part, and the election, madam. And Tomo, she's not happy with the change, but still she's going forward. She's going forward, assisting them in the mock election. So that is where Tomo knows that okay, we women are the election madam is doing her thing, which is important, which she is responsible to do for. So because I am responsible for my family, so that's where Tomo understand that we women are responsible for every change, and we should take stand for what responsibilities we are given with.
Actually, I think, Carolyn, one of the most important lines in the movie is said by Tomo, and that is when she says, "We were always happy." At the end of the day, whatever we do, be it even in the modern world, whether you are conservative, whether you are an NRA member, whether you are a liberal, whether you are fighting for abortion rights, whether all the wars, all the conflicts that's happening around the world, the underlying goal for all this is because people want to be happy. And Bhutan, we are a society and a culture that is rooted in happiness. If you ask anyone about Bhutan, the first question is always, it's the happy country. Bhutan has always become synonymous with happiness, and in a way, for me, when she says that line, it's very important, because it says, why are we doing all this? Why are we changing? And because we were always happy. And it's not that, I don't want the audience to think that, Pawo is anti-modernization, he's anti-westernization. I'm very Western, actually. I'm a product of the West. But what I'm saying is that here's the story of my country. And we had to open up, we had to embrace change, we had to modernize, because that's what the world expected us to do, to keep up with this modern world. That's why, we were the last country in the world to allow television. We were the last country in the world to allow.
And you were probably better off for it, because I'll tell you, I love film. I'm a film critic. My job is watching TV and watching films. But with with every good there's a bad, you know.
Yeah.
There has to be a balance, and with westernization and modernization, the balance is not
Yes.
it's not balanced at all.
A very important thing, I think, a foundation of happiness in Bhutan is the sense of contentment. And when you open up, when you modernize, when you go through this change, contentment is lost because there's too much information.
And everyone is telling you what you should,
Exactly.
what they think happiness should look like
Yes,
for you.
yes.
And that's the big problem, because I love that line, because that's what I'm not even joking. When I was watching it from the beginning of the film, that was in my head, where I was thinking, oh, people are talking about modernization, democracy, and I was thinking the thing about, yes, modernization is good, whereas, like, for instance, with medicine advancements, that kind of stuff, if you need help, you can get it. Education is good, but with that comes the cost of becoming more unsatisfied with your life, because you have people from the outside telling you what you should do to be happy.
Yes.
You know, and a lot of it goes back to colonialism and colonization and Western influence, because the gun in the film is from the Civil War.
Yeah.
And it's a war that was fought for oppression, the oppression of black people in North America. And for white people, like the character Ron, this symbolized, it's a collector's item. But for me, when I saw that gun, it was just like, this gun was used to oppress people. And that's what the monk says. The monk says this war brought death and destruction. You know, this gun represents a point in Tibetan and Bhutanese history where our people were killed.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and for that's where, like, you can look at modernization, and just even using Somo's perspective, we were happy, but now we have people looking for this gun. The happiness is is gone, because, like, for the character Benji, if he hadn't been looking for this gun for Ron, he could have been spending time with his wife.
Yeah.
You know.
And actually, Carolyn, it's very interesting you caught on that, you know, even Bhutan and Tibet, you know. Why did I mention that? Because frankly, Carolyn, if you look at Bhutanese history, that's the only war we had ever fought.
Ever! And what started that war with Tibet, it all goes back to the politics of China and then Europe and all of that.
That is brought in. And even, for example, when Purba and Ron talk, and he said, you're from the land of Lincoln and JFK.
And I was like, they got assassinated.
They got assassinated with guns.
With guns, right? So right. And so for Deki and Sam, I want to ask you, because you both in the Q&A, you said you don't have any formal education, because again, there is no film school and no acting school in Bhutan. But I'm always so impressed with first-time actors, with novice performers, where to me, I think as sometimes having novice performers in films like this, where, like, the most genuine reactions will give the best to me, give the best feeling to me. I'm always just, like, so impressed, and I'm always just, like, to me the reactions feel more realistic. And that's what gets me invested in the story. Like, as I said, like, Stomo being quiet, like, you say so much with your face and so much with your body and being so observant, that drew me to watching the character of Stomo. And then for Benji, like, again, questionable choices, but the way how you just, like, your interactions with, I think my favorite scene is the one with Apple in the room where they're bargaining for the gun, and like, your reactions there, you were just like, wait, what? And you're like, you know, like, but you're surprised, but also you're just like, oh yeah, this is how my people are. So I want you both to talk about playing characters that are very representative of your culture and people, because I think it would have been different if it was a fictional film with a story, for instance, using, like, an example, like an adaptation of a Shakespeare play, whereas instead of this film being an adaptation of a Shakespeare play, it's about Bhutanese culture and Bhutanese society, and especially about such a pivotal time in Bhutanese history, because I was doing some research, like, Bhutan it still has the monarchy, still exists, but it's still a democracy, and that is what this film is about. So talk to me about playing characters that you are so intimately familiar with in a situation that you're intimately familiar with, where regards, instead of playing something that would have been, to use the term, alien to you. Like, do you think that's what helped you as performers and in getting more connected to it and feeling more natural in front of the camera?
Well, it being a local artist in Bhutan, we are no professional actors, and when we do a commercial film in Bhutan, it's like till now I've played several movies in Bhutan, and the films in Bhutan, when we act, when we present the characters, we seem to go beyond subtleness and
big expression.
And when I got selected for Pawo's film, I knew I had to change a lot of things in myself as an actor, because it was definitely going for international films, and I was so nervous. I was not sure if I was going to be able to do that. But Pawo and Stephanie, our producer, they even told us, we even had classes for a week, building our characters, getting to know the characters even more, and that time I learned a lot. The subtleness we need to carry on with the character, to keep up with the character, to express. If I want to be angry, like I just can't be like, I just don't have to show that. But with certain look, you can express that. And if you're feeling sad, then you don't necessarily have to cry. You don't necessarily have to shed tears. You can show that in your eyes. So there's so many incredible things I've learned, and like I said before, I can so much relate to Tsomo, because I am like you said, introvert extrovert person. So I even observe people in my real life as well. So much connection in Tsomo that it was a privilege for me to play that character Tsomo.
And for you?
Benji, I think, was a very I auditioned for it, and somehow I got the role. It was like a privilege, and I think to play Benji, I had to get rid of my inhibitions first and my conditionings as Tandon, and I had to remove the marks of Tandon and try to be as Benji as possible. So Pawo and Stephanie had we did some workshops to know the character better, so that we become the character, not play the character. And I think the key was the key to any good performance, not just Benji, but for any artist, would be to have faith in the director. And I think, what is faith now? That's synonymous to trust. And what would be trust? Something that is not doubt. So, and I had no doubt whatsoever in my director, because he is a person who thinks outside the box, always very creative, and is proven with action before. So it's easier for me to have trust in my director. And since I had my trust in my director, he knew how to craft Benji properly, and from my own end I also put my utmost genuine effort. So it collided well, I guess, and I was watching it here in Busan twice, sorry. And I just was very content with the Benji character.
I love the character, honestly. This is a film that I could watch over and over, because I love films like this, because I was reading one of the synopsis of the film, and like the person was saying it's a simple film, but for me I was like, there's nothing simple about this film. And I think it has to do with like I was discussing before, like my own personal history, like where I came from, and the history of Barbados, and like how war changed the African continent, and how modernization changed our cultures, and like it brought good things, but a lot of that good came out of very bad, came out of like strife and war. And there's two things in this film that like the film is talking about contentment. There's being happy, and then there's being content. Where you're like, I'm happy, I'm satisfied with where I am, which is like where someone's like, we were happy people, we're content. And then there's Benji, where he's not content and he's not happy with where he is, so he's looking at westernization and modernization as a way to achieve happiness and contentment. So your film is kind of talking about the differences between happiness, because to me happiness can be temporary, whereas contentment is more of a state of being. It's more permanent. It's a more long-lasting sense of being. So the film talks about that, and I think to me the representation of that is the monk. You know, where for him, he comes in and he's kind of like the driving force for this film. You know, like once he goes on this quest for this gun, that's when the story really starts, and that's where now that I'm thinking about it, it's almost like that's where there's a phrase called the winds of strife. So he's kind of like the winds of strife coming in. And like it
begins with him.
It begins with him and it ends with him. He's like a storm, you know. He comes, he blows in, and he blows out, you know. But the thing is, he's very unaware of his whole part in this. He's very unaware that all of the situations that's happening is connected to him somehow, but he's so oblivious, and he's like, oh, but James Bond, you know, he's a hero, you know. He's just like, oh, I'm here looking for this gun. I don't know what the gun is for. I don't know what Lama's intending. He's like, I'm on this quest for this gun. So talk to me about the monk, because he's adorable. First, as far as the actor, to me, I was like, he's so adorable, and he was just like so funny, and like so like he was just like, I'm just here drinking my Coke or my black water. I'm just here sitting out watching 007 like it's a regular day. He's like, oh wait, the gun, like when he was like when Benji was trying to bargain for the gun, he's like, no. You know, he's like, no, you will have to wait for this gun. He's like, he doesn't care, and he's not angry or anything. He's just like, no. And he just like, okay, I'll continue to be on my way. And at the end of the film, it's the same thing. He has no idea of all the chaos that happened. And then he's just walking up into this view with a tank of kerosene on a tank of gas. And I was just like, he is such a fascinating guy. I was like, I wish I could be like that sometimes. just walk through life just being totally...
Well, you know, the actor who played the monk, his name is Tandon Wangchuk, but he goes as Misty Terrace, and he's actually a really, really popular rock star in the Himalayan region. He's very popular in Bhutan, but also amongst other countries. For example, when he came with me to TIFF, he came to TIFF, all the Tibetans in Toronto, they were so excited. They were like, oh, Misty Terrace is in town, let's request him to do a concert.
I think for TIFF they do the portraits. Is he the one that had his hair like kind of slick?
He had dreadlocks.
Yes, I saw the picture. Oh, okay, so that I see. He looks kind of different with hair.
Actually, Carol, his trademark look is he has this huge afro, huge. So when I first met him online and he auditioned, and I told him, I was like, I want you to be the monk, but you have to shave your hair, which is his trademark. And he said, well, you know, I've done it once before, and that was for the king, and I'll do it again for this film. So, you know, I think he did an amazing job, acting for the very first time. And for the monk, you know, what I really wanted to celebrate with this film is the theme of interdependence. In Buddhism, we always talk about interdependence, how all phenomena, it's all interdependent with other things. For example, the movie ending, you know, it's a spoiler, but the movie ending with the rainbow. The rainbow is a symbol of interdependence in our culture.
Okay.
How does the rainbow come into existence? You have raindrops falling a certain angle, you have light hitting it at a certain angle, you know, two things that are not even related to one another, but the coming together of these different cause and condition suddenly creates this beautiful rainbow, so vivid, so colorful, but it's really non-existent. And just as it magically appeared, it magically disappeared. So you know, all these characters where you had the monk, the lama, Tsomo, Benji, Ron, the election officers, the villagers, the village itself, all that are the raindrops and the lights coming together to create this rainbow that is the monk and the gun. And as he walks off into the blooming flowers, it disappears just as the rainbow disappears. But yes, you know, in a way, as I was saying, each character represents a certain quality of the Bhutanese tradition. For the monk, and definitely innocence, contentment, you know, devotion to the lama. Like the lama says something, so crazy, and he doesn't even question, oh, why would you want a gun? You know, he says, okay, fine, I'll go do it if you want me to do it. So you know,
Okay, so we're gonna probably have to wrap it up. So I think one of the last question I want to ask is the Lama. It's about the Lama because he's kind of like an enigma. But I think I'm not fully familiar with Bhutanese culture, but I was thinking he would be. So for me, I see Soma as the representation of female power and like the matriarch and the matriarchal society, but also of wisdom, you know. And for Benji is youthfulness, you know, is the looking for is to me Benji represents youthfulness, but also exuberance and just wanting and what's the word, having a goal for something. Like he has a goal, like he has a goal. But for me, I kind of see the Lama as also representing foresight and wisdom, because he saw, like, while the monk is like he's the winds of change, I see like the Lama as the weather forecaster in a sense where he's like, I see a storm coming and I need to stop it. And
it's very interesting. The Lama, we only casted him like a week before the film started.
What?
Yes. In a way, that's how our film productions are in Bhutan, because you know it's
chaos.
it's a real chaos, but it's an orderly chaos. And you know, we didn't really have a Lama. I tried to cast different Lamas. Each one would pull out because they were not ready. And then I was in the location Ural to shoot the film, and we still didn't have a Lama confirmed. We were shooting in like 5 days. And then I had the stupa where I wanted to shoot the climatic scene. And then because I needed to clear the area and cut the grass, I asked the villagers, who owns the stupa? And they said, oh, this guy who lives down there. So I went to his house and I knocked on his door and I entered. And there he was sitting by the window, just as in the opening scene of the movie. He's sitting there. And I was like, whoa, and you know his silhouette. And I went to him and I said, oh, is that land yours? And you know, his deep husky voice, he was like, yes it is. And I was like, oh, so I want to make a movie there, you know, I just want your permission to be able to go into your land, cut the grass, can I do this? And he was like, yeah. And then we started talking, and then he told me about the history of the stupa, and then I was drawn to his smoky eyes, his beard, and I was like, what are you doing the next few months? And he says, well, I have a cave up in the mountain and I'm going to go there and meditate. And I was like, well, would you be willing to act in my movie? I just need you for the next 2 months, please. At first he was a little bit reluctant, but you know, we brought him on and he did an amazing job. For me, he represents culture and tradition, but then also how culture and tradition is very adaptable. It is transformative. Buddhist culture, Bhutanese culture, though we are very conservative, though we are very traditional, it has been a culture and tradition that has always been transformative. It has adapted with change, you know. And in a way, yes, as you said, he sees the future, he sees what is coming, he's the forecaster, but in a way, he's not going to, he has that wisdom and he has that compassion to be like, I'm not going to try and obstruct this. This is the change is coming, and instead of being a force to obstruct it, I will do what our culture and our tradition has always done, and that is we will adapt. We will play our part in making the best of the situation. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think he's fantastic. Like he's very quiet. He's like the wizened old man, as you say, but he's very and like I love all the performances in the film. I think everyone did a fantastic job. And this is one of those kind of films like every time you watch it, you'll notice something new or something different. And I wish we had more time because I'd ask you about the girl that was working in the bar. She's kind of, to me, she's very smart.
She's my daughter.
That's your daughter? Oh, yeah. She was. I think she was very she was very interesting to me in the same way how Soma is very quiet and like I pay attention to quiet characters. That's the character I was thinking. I wonder what she's thinking about all of this that's going around.
You know, actually, the interesting thing, Carolyn, and I want to bring this up is my first choice was not James Bond. It was Rambo, Sylvester Stallone.
Okay.
Because when I was growing up in Bhutan and this change came, there was this fascination of Sylvester Stallone as Rambo. You know, just this bare-chested man with a red, bandana, carrying these big AK-47 and rocket launchers, and he became a cultural icon. His posters were plastered all over Bhutan. and his posters replaced those of the Buddhist deities or those of the lamas, those of the monarchs even, and he was this cultural icon. But of course, when you want to display something like that in a movie, there's a lot of rights and and unfortunately we were not able to get the rights for Rambo. But I'm very grateful to the producers of James Bond, Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, who were big fans of Lunana. So they were very supportive, and when I put my proposal to them, they said, "Of course, please, by all means use James Bond." So we were very grateful to them.
I think James Bond kind of, to me, in a sense, works better as a symbol of westernization.
Yes.
In that he's more refined.
Yes.
He's coming with the suit.
Yeah.
And he looks more refined, and he can be easily misidentified as a non-threat. But he's still walking around.
Well,
with a
we're very
gigantic
lucky
gun,
because usually James Bond carries a very small pistol.
Normally a very small pistol.
In the he has the AK-47, so we were very lucky.
And that was actually a big thing for a lot of discussions for a lot of critics, and a lot of critics was like talking like, we're accustomed to seeing him with like having a 9mm or something, but here he is walking around with a gigantic AK. So it's like that whole, again, the juxtaposition of refined and Western and modern with a weapon of mass destruction, So I think for the film, it actually makes more sense and it worked better. So like I'm like, and also Daniel Craig, like, come on, you can't but again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. This is great, and I really love the film genuinely, and like he's so funny. Benji. No, seriously, Benji. To be honestly, Somo and Benji are my favorite characters. Like the scene where the guns are, where the scenes where the guns are getting buried, expression on his face is like he's like when he turns back, he's like, wait, let me think of a solution. And it was like, okay, it was like Benji's hilarious. But again, thank you so much all for taking the time for me. And congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
And I wish you much successful. I'm gonna be looking. I'll see if I can find some Bhutanese films, because one thing I'm always interested in is how different countries and different cultures have different acting styles. Like you were saying, like you Decky, you were saying like there's bigger expressions and bigger movements, and it kind of made me think of like Bollywood acting and telenovela acting. Like their expressions are bigger and it's more dramatic and everything, whereas more like North American acting is more subtle and more. I kind of prefer big because I'm from the Caribbean and that's how we are too. Like we're big, whereas like I talk with my hands a lot, so like that's the thing for our culture too. So yeah, but I'll see if I can find some more Bhutanese films to make. And I had heard of your film previously, but I never got to see it. But I'll try to see if I can watch it. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.